Good morning, guys. Welcome to my unboxing and review of the high-grade Leo R. This is a 2025 premium Bandai exclusive release that I got for $26, which is a little bit more than I was expecting to pay, especially because this has the thinnest box of the three side story Leos. And from what I could tell, this didn't actually come with all that much, with its only weapon being the beam lance here, but I assume that cost maybe from a much more of the kit being retooled than the other two, but I'm not exactly sure. Again, it looks like we are going to be using the same lower arms and upper legs of the standard Leo for this kit like we were with the other two. So again, I'm not really sure where they're getting the price from, but of course, here's the Leo R, one of the three side story Leos from the Oz Special Forces team. And of course, here it is pictured on the box dueling with the Geminas Unit 2. So unlike a lot of other p-bandai releases, this is going to be using a standard high-grade style box art, very painting style, showing off the metallic sheen all over the Leo R, and showing off its high agility here, with a large booster unit on its back jetting off while it prepares to stab the Geminas here with its beam lance. So I'm not the biggest fan of this design, especially with the flowing hair. I might sound a little bit hypocritical here with how much I like the Leo S's like large flowing cape, but the hair seems just a little bit odd to me. I don't know exactly what it is. But of course, having a standard style box, we are going to be getting an image of the full painted build down here on the bottom and showing off the gimmicks of this kit, namely the wide range of articulation that this kit has, and of course the very impressive beam dual lance weapon, with an extra set of expressive hands, one for holding the lance and one for having an open hand to replicate a pose like you see on the box art there. And then showing off the special almost dual camera looking sensor, but it's actually just a visor that this kit has as opposed to the standard Leo mono eye, and then talking about the articulation for the wing stabilizers on the back, showing off the extension balancer, which is I guess what they're calling the hair here. It's a balancer similar to like a tail on an animal, and then of course showing that it can articulate and show off different, I guess, expressions that they're calling it, and then of course your beam dual lancer down there. And on the back here we get some information on the development of the Leo R, being piloted by Kratz Sylvie, part of the Stardust Knights, which is like a special forces team. So inside the box we will get 4 bags of runners, which is the same amount as the Leo S and Leo N, but the actual like parts count and parts size seem to be smaller than both, in fitting with its, I guess, status as the high mobility unit of the three. And of course, we will be getting this standard style manual to go along with that standard style box, showing off that this is a rather tall unit, but I assume all that extra height is coming from this rather large ornate head crest. Again, just like the other two, unknown output and propulsion, unknown material building this, unlike the other two, which were both like, I think, titanium alloy. And then for armaments, very simple. You get your lance, you get some shoulder shields, and you get active jammer leaves. Not exactly sure what those are in this kit, but again, on the back here, a lot of the same information we saw on the box. We're talking about the development of the Leo R, including that the like wing stabilized units are actually from the Taurus. We get information on the beam lancer unit there, the extension balancer hair thing, and talking about the Stardust Knights in general, and then our color guide in English and Japanese in full color. So very similar to the other two side story units, this is going to be using gold for a number of parts all across the kit. I am probably going to be repainting that in EX Yellow Gold. Again, like I said in the Leo S video, I'm actually filming these unboxings all at the same time, so I don't actually know how it's going to end up looking on the final kit, or if I will be eating my words after I finish building this kit. So getting into our parts list here, very similar to the other two, we are going to be using very minimal parts from runners A and B from the base Leo. It looks like we are going to be using actually less parts than the other two. We're going to be using the same parts from the lower arm of the base Leo, but we aren't going to be using both parts from the upper leg. We're only going to be using one part from the base Leo for the upper leg. Runner B, just like the other two side story Leos, are pretty much only going to be using joints for the knee from this runner and just eschewing the rest of the standard Leo joints. And then we get into the unique rest of the runners on this in this kit. Unfortunately, unlike the Leo S, this is still going to be using polycat ball joints, which were a bit of an issue on the base Leo. Certain parts, like the connection from the leg into the hip, I found to be very loose from the polycat ball joints, and things like the torso as well. So I am a little bit concerned on how this is going to hold up, especially being a very expressive dynamic kit like this. And it also looks like, unfortunately, we're going to be getting a rather large sticker sheet. Unlike the two other side story Leos on the base Leo, which had a minimal or no sticker sheet, this looks like it is going to be a bit sizable. So getting to the build itself, this does look like it's going to be a little bit more involved than your typical Leo kit, but it is going to be using the same shoulder joints from the base Leo, but it looks like there's going to be a lot more parts layering than your typical Leo. Unfortunately, it is going to be using the polycap ball joints for the torso articulation, so not exactly sure that's going to look, especially when you want to actually like articulate your torso quite a bit with this being a melee focused unit, but we will see. Then of course, talking about building up the head here with either your standard Leo mono eye or with the special visor there for the Leo R, which is what I'm going to be building this kit with. Of course, a lot of color inaccurate parts here that are going to need stickers on the head, and then talking about mounting either of the two head options, and then you get into your arms, which look extremely simple, and unfortunately it looks like this entire elbow part is going to be color inaccurate and will need a sticker, which is very unfortunate. Other than that, the arms do look like they're going to be the most similar to the standard Leo of the 3 side story Leos. Then we get into our feet here with these high heel feet. I am a little bit concerned about the balance of these, but we will see once the kit is built. And then we get into the rest of the assembly of the leg. Unfortunately, it is going to be using a polycap joint for the connection from the joint going into the waist into the leg, which is very unfortunate. That was a very loose part on the base Leo, and the part I was most annoyed by. The other 2 side story Leos completely reworked this joint to be full PS plastic on plastic, so it is a shame that this is using the polycap ball joint. And then, of course, we go into building the rest of the leg here. Then we finish assembling the legs. We get into the waist here, which seems not all that involved and fairly similar to the standard Leo. Then we assemble the full kit there, and then we get into the beam lancer, which is a fairly simple weapon, as you might expect from a melee weapon. So a lot of the value in this kit is going to be from how well you can pose it, and I am concerned about that given the polycap ball joints in the legs, but we will see once the kit is fully assembled. Maybe my worries will be proven wrong. Inside the bags, we will get 9 runners, which is the least of the 3 side story Leos, and with these runners having the smallest parts, this is going to be, I think, the simplest build of the 3, but again, we will see once I actually complete that build. And unfortunately, we will be getting this rather sizable color correcting sticker sheet, with some parts being understandable, like the metallic pink detail here for the standard Leo mono eye sensor, or the visor here. We will get a magenta rectangle here to wrap around the bar and the torso, 2 gray accents for the sides of the head, and unfortunately these very large blue stickers here for wrapping around the elbow armor. I might end up just repainting those details in goof blue because it's a close enough color tone, but because these wraparound stickers are fairly obnoxious and do end up looking pretty bad on the kit no matter how well you think you apply them. So yeah, like I just said, I will probably end up repainting the elbows in goof blue. As for the runners themselves, so these runners were printed in June of 2025. Just like the standard Leo and the Leo N, this will be coming with PC7 here for a set of polycap ball joints for all across this kit. Again, didn't really like these on the base Leo. We'll see if I like them here. I am predicting that I probably will not. Runner A here in this very light, what I can only describe as toothpaste blue, and like a very pale teal here for the main armor tone of the Leo R. Again, we are only going to be using parts for the lower arms and 1 part for the upper thigh here from this runner. Runner B from the base Leo, going to be in a primer frame gray for a number of joints for across this kit. Again, we're only going to be using the knees from this runner as well as the 2 parts for the shoulder joints going into the torso. Runners C1 and C2, with this lower part shared between the 2 of them, going to be a multicolor runner, C1 coming in 4 different colors, C2 coming in 2. We will be getting this dark teal here for the main accent color of this kit for a number of parts all across this kit for things like the feet, the knees, the torso, etc. We will be getting an injection gold here for parts for the stabilizer hair, parts for the shoulders, etc. I will probably be repainting this in EX Yellow Gold. I don't know if I said it already, but I am filming all of these unboxings for the side story Leos at the same time, so I have not built either of the other 2 side story Leos as of recording this, but I assume the EX Yellow Gold will look really nice on those kits, so I will be repainting this. I have not decided yet if I actually want to repaint the hair stabilizer, because I actually do like how the injection gold looks specifically for the hair here. I don't really like it on very hard looking metallic parts, but on flexible parts like this, I do think it can look all right. We will be getting a slightly off-white here for parts for our Beam Lancer, and then we will be getting clear pink here for the beam effect part for the Beam Lancer and a clear part for the visor. Runners D1 and D2, this middle part shared between them, for brand new for the Leo R, going to be in that same very light pale teal color for the rest of our armor parts here for things like the back skirts, the front skirts, parts for, I think, the sides of the head. We get our little muzzle here for the Leo, and parts for our legs down here. And then runners E1 and E2 with this middle part shared between them in a primer frame gray for the rest of the frame and joint parts for all across this kit. We'll be getting parts like our special holding hand for the lance as well as the open expressive hand for the other side. We'll be getting parts for things like our elbow joints and the inner frame parts for our torso. So overall, I'm a little bit disappointed going into building this kit with the very large sticker sheet, the relatively few parts count for the price being more expensive than the Leo S, which felt like a really good value for the price, and the over-reliance on polycap ball joints where the other 2 reworked those into standard PS plastic on plastic joints. But we will see if my concerns are unfounded after the build. All right. Welcome back. Here is the high-grade Leo R snap-built, panel-lined, and lightly painted. I did go over most of the gold parts in EX White Gold, apart from the head stabilizer slash hair, just because I feel like for the kind of flowy, flexible hair look that they're going for, the injection gold actually does look a little bit better for that kind of blonde hair look than gold metallic paint would, in my opinion. I may try repainting it later just to see how it looks, but I still think the injection gold is fine for this kind of application. I also did repaint the elbows in goof blue because of that giant massive wraparound sticker that I did not think would look very good on that detail, especially because it's two parts that move together, so there is a bit of a seam line where they meet. It is disguised a little bit as a panel line, but there's a slight lip difference in the geometry that would make the sticker look pretty bad, I would think. But anyway, getting right into the build, and I'm going to be repeating myself a lot from the Leo N and the Leo S. This is still a Leo at the end of the day, and it is fairly simple, though they did beef up the construction in a few of the parts, namely the torso and the head, and I feel like they spread out the complication of the build a little bit better than the Leo S, where it was pretty much entirely localized in the torso, and the Leo N, which was also mostly localized in the torso, but also had a little bit in the legs. This kit is very simple, quick, and streamlined, and you can definitely get it done in just a couple of hours, just like with the other two Stardust Knights. So if you don't have that much time to work on Gunpla, this is a decent choice of a kit to work on, just to bang it out quickly in an afternoon. Or if you have a weekend and don't feel like building a real greater master grade, you can build all three just fine. So this build is quick and simple. The torso does have some very nice layering. Unfortunately, though, it does still use those polycap ball joints that I really don't like from the base Leo, but I am happy to report that the base connection for the polycap ball joint, at least in the leg, the part where the joint actually slots into, has been reworked to be a much tighter fit. So the legs have much less of a stability issue than the base Leo did. Unfortunately, the issues with the torso being a bit floppy due to the multiple polycap ball joints acting as the entirety of the articulation there still applies. The torso is a little bit loose and does tend to pop out very easily as you try to use the ab articulation. So while I find the use of polycaps in the torso a little bit unfortunate, for the most part this kit is fairly stable, which is a bit of a surprise given the very tiny surface area of the feet on this kit. Fully built up, this kit does have very little problem standing on its 2 feet. It cannot balance on 1 foot, so you will not be seeing a running pose in the posing section, just because that very tiny amount of surface area is not enough to balance the entire kit on just 1 foot. But overall, the build is fairly simple, fairly streamlined, about on par with what you would expect from the Leo S and the Leo N. Maybe a little bit less polished due to the increased number of color correcting stickers and polycap ball joints, but still a adequate build nonetheless. So getting to aesthetics now, as per usual, I will talk about the color correcting stickers and color accuracy before I get into my opinions on this design. So as you can see, I did use most of the color correcting stickers on this kit, apart from these giant wraparound stickers for the elbows, which I painted in goof blue. That isn't exactly the right shade of tone you're supposed to use. The tone on this kit does have a little bit of green to it and is a little bit more somber, but the shade of blue is close enough that at a glance it doesn't look too different. So of course, getting into the color correcting stickers on this kit, sticker 1 is going to be for the mono eye detail behind the visor and mask in the head. So unfortunately, unlike the Leo S, it is actually much more difficult to get the overall helmet off. So you can swap out the visor and mask for the base Leo mono eye, so I'm not going to be showing it off in this video. I tried to get the rest of the head off before filming, and it just wasn't coming off. I don't know what exactly they changed about the connection, because at a glance it looks very similar to the one used in the Leo S, but that kit, the actual helmet part of the head, came off way more easily than this kit, which just seems to be stuck. So I unfortunately will not be able to show you that, but I feel like the same things I said about the Leo S will apply here, where the mono eye sensor for the base Leo is so recessed in there that it's very hard to get light in there to reflect off of it, so it won't look all that great. Stickers 2 and 3 are going to be these gray and black ventilation detail stickers on the sides of the head, which is unfortunate. It's a color correcting sticker because on pretty much, I think on all of the other Leo kits I've taken a look at, they were color separated details. So it is unfortunate that they are a sticker here. Of course, sticker 4 is going to be the metallic pink visor with a tiny blue accent underneath the visor. It is going on a clear pink piece, so if you don't want to use that color correcting sticker, you can paint in that thin blue accent yourself and just leave the rest of the part in clear pink. Sticker 5 is going to be for this bright pink sticker here, wrapping around the bar and the torso, same thing as the Leo S and N. They did include a sticker to fix that color inaccurate part from the base Leo. Sticker 6 you get 2 of, and I did not use. They're going to be the wraparound stickers for the elbow detail here, 2 parts are sandwiched together, and you can see what I was talking about earlier. There is a bit of a geometric lip going from the back to the front, so that wraparound sticker will probably not fully adhere to that gap and not look all that great. So yeah, that is a part I would recommend you just paint in yourself instead of using the color correcting sticker. And unlike the Leo N and Leo S, this kit is not entirely color accurate besides the stickers. There is a major color inaccurate detail on the undersides of the shoulders. Of course, the main shoulder armor is two pieces, one part for the gold accent and one part for this light blue under part that the gold part slots into. The underside of the light blue part is, of course, well, being the one piece, is going to be in the same light blue as the rim of the shoulder here. It is supposed to be in the same shade of gray as the frame, so I painted that in using Phantom Gray from the Xeon Gundam marker set, and I think it looks fine. That is a bit of an unfortunate major detail to be color inaccurate, especially when it's accurate in parts like the stabilizers or boosters. Not exactly sure what these are on the back here, where you can see the underside here is in the same gray, same thing with the back skirt. Where that detail is color accurate across the rest of the kit, it is not in the shoulder, which is a little bit unfortunate. I feel like especially the detail for the shoulder there, for the sides of the head, and especially for the elbows, with how much of the rest of the kit they reworked, could have easily been reworked in this kit to be color accurate and parts separated off the runner, and not requiring painting or stickers on your part. So a little bit unfortunate on that part, that it does fall a little bit short of the color accuracy we've come to expect from the Stardust Knight Leo squad. But as for my opinions on this design, I am warming up to it a little bit. I do think I like it a little bit more than the Leo N now, from being my least favorite of the three designs, but I'm still not the biggest fan of it. This very much combines the design language of something like the Nobel Gundam and the Leo, where it's going for a very kind of feminine silhouette, especially with that hourglass figure and the long flowing blonde hair, alongside its weaponry and fighting style and stuff, emphasizing the agility of the mobile suit compared to the brute force seen in the Leo N, and the regality and kind of effortless grace and nobility shown off by the Leo S. So this is an example of a time where they've tried to do more feminine mobile suit designs, like they've tried over the years with things like the Nobel Gundam, which was very overt in being magical girl inspired. This kit, which combines that kind of aesthetic with the Leo, alongside a little bit of, I guess, fantasy with the large shoulder armor and the big metallic head crest and things like that, and its large lance weapon. And then of course, they've tried it later to, in my opinion, much greater success with things like the aerial, which was much more subtle about it. This being so overt and, I guess, over the top in a way that doesn't quite mesh with the rest of the aesthetic of the Stardust Knights and things like that, does make it feel a little bit off. However, I do think there are plenty of interesting things about this kit. I think if they just got rid of the hair, it would be mostly okay, because I do like the extra boosters or stabilizers or whatever on the backs of the shoulders. I like the way the armor kind of has this rounded edge to it that makes it feel more aerodynamic and nimble. The more leggy proportions of this kit, I feel like with a couple of tweaks, you could get this design looking really great, but as it is right now, even compared to something like the Leo S, where that was like super gaudy and over the top, the hair is just a little bit too much for me. But I do think that repainting everything minus the hair and this soft shade of white gold does really help the look. It really brings together this color scheme into something a little bit more cohesive. I think the bright yellow on the original color scheme was a little bit too, I guess, clashing with the rest of the color scheme, where it's very much trying to go for a more subtle, more somber color scheme, where the more faded white gold works better than the bright yellow of the base kit. So yeah, I would recommend you repaint in those gold parts in white gold. Still not exactly sure about the hair, because again, I think the injection gold looks best for this kind of flowing hair, but I also don't really like the hair in this design. It's just really weird to me. I've never liked when mobile suits have like overt, like hair-looking hair. When it's something like cables, like what the Nadley has, I think it can work fine, but for this kit, it's just very odd in my opinion. Of course, for a base size and visual comparison, here is the Leo R next to a standard sized high grade, meaning the high grade Blue Destiny Unit 1, and a more or less standard Leo, the Leo Flight type. Don't worry, you'll be getting the visual of this with the rest of the Stardust Knights right after this, but just for a quick baseline comparison, the Leo R is going to be standing taller than your average high grade due to the tweaking of the proportions with the elongated torso to exaggerate that hourglass figure that it has going on, as well as the more leggy proportions, and of course the high heel-like feet, which do tie the look together a little bit, but also make this kit very difficult to balance on one foot, like I was talking about earlier. So of course, this will take up a little bit extra height on your shelf compared to your average high grade, and will take up much more depth-wise space when it is equipped with the Beam Lancer, like it should be at all times. Even on the back of the manual for the Stardust Knights, when it's showing off the neutral line art poses for all three of them, the Leo R is always holding onto the Beam Lancer. There's no reason for it not to. So yeah, with it equipped, this will take up a ton of extra space on your shelf, so be prepared for that. And of course, getting the gang all together, here are your three Stardust Knights right next to each other. And as you can see, yeah, especially if you have all of these right next to each other on your shelf, they will take up a ton of space, with the Leo N and Leo S being much wider than your typical kits, and the weaponry of the Leo N and the Leo R being much larger than your average kits. So yeah, especially if you want to display all three of these together, make sure to allocate more space than normal for a trio of mobile suits like this, just because of how large they are. And you can really see what I was talking about with each of them being separated both by color and by niche. So the Leo N, being the muscle of the three, is going to be in a dark green with a bright yellow gold accent color here with a huge axe. The Leo S, being the regal commander unit, is going to be in a bit more of a subdued but still noble red gold with a bright red and gold color scheme, of course, but the long flowing cape and very ornate weapons in the beam musket and the beam cavalry saber. And then you have your Leo R over there, emphasizing agility and grace with a more somber two-tone blue color scheme with the more faded white gold, which I think emphasizes that color scheme a lot more than the bright yellow that it comes with, which I think is the same shade as the Leo N. But yeah, and as you can see with its much slimmer proportions, it also emphasizes the agility of the mobile suit. So yeah, here are the three all together, and together they do look like one big cohesive package on your shelf. So that's definitely how I'm going to be displaying them. I'll probably adjust them to be in more like action-y poses, although I don't know how dynamic exactly I can get with some of the posing issues that these kits have, as well as the space constraints. But these three together definitely do make for a great package. As for your accessories, here is the Leo R with everything it comes with. As you can see, this is incredibly bare bones, even more so than the Leo N and S, which were both very kind of basic kits as far as their accessories go. So starting as usual with our hand options, you are going to be getting the most hand options out of all three of the Leos. You'll be getting your standard Leo holding hands, which not really much of a point in using the right holding hand, because like I was talking about earlier, this kit pretty much is always going to be holding the beam lancer at all times. No real reason to not have it in the hand. So the holding hand on the right, not great. Holding hand on the left, you can use as a supporting hand for the beam lancer to use it in a two-handed grip, which you will see in the posing section. For your other hand options, you'll be getting this open expressive hand only for the left side that you can use to recreate more, I guess, elegant poses like the box art, which you will be seeing in the posing section. And you will get to this unique holding hand here with a bent wrist and the thumb supporting the grip on the beam lancer for, well, wielding the beam lancer, which doesn't look all that natural in the basic holding hand there and can't really pull off many, I guess, realistic or reasonable looking melee strikes with it equipped, so you have this special holding hand for that. And besides that, your only other accessory is of course going to be the beam lancer, especially with the beam effect on it, which I don't know why you would display it without the beam effect. Maybe unless you have like space constraints or something like that, but this is an impressively long weapon and looks great on your shelf. This is the part of the Leo R that like I really have zero complaints about. My gripes with the design aside, this is a fantastic weapon that will look great on the shelf and is perfect for emphasizing the agility and elegance that this kit displays while fighting. So you'll be seeing this a lot in the posing section. So yeah, that's literally it. Those are the only things in terms of accessories that the Leo R comes with, and it's actually a pretty complete spread because I don't think it actually uses any other weapons in universe, not even beam sabers or anything like that. So yeah, not really much to complain about, and it does come with pretty much all of the hand options you would want. So getting into articulation now, starting as usual with the head. For an upward look, you can get pretty much nothing. It's just going to be flat in line with the body. For a downward look, you get an okay downward look, very similar to the Leo S. This does have an articulated head that you can move around, unlike the base Leo and the Leo N, which had next to nothing or actually nothing. You get a very minor side to side tilt, and while you can 360 the head in theory, the hair gets in the way a lot. So unless you want the hair just kind of jutting out like this in a slightly unnatural look, the most you can get realistically is a slight, maybe 15 or so degree tilt before you knock off these, I think, stabilizers or boosters on the back with the hair. Speaking of the hair is going to be on a hinge that can go either nearly straight down like so, or up a full 90 degrees. You don't get a full 180 degrees like you can with the cloak of the Leo S. In the shoulders then, for a shoulder swing, you unfortunately get next to no shoulder swing. You get them a little bit backwards, but next to nothing forwards, which is a little bit unfortunate. In terms of shoulder raises, the shoulder armor itself can rotate independently of the arm to facilitate about a 90-degree side raise. You will get full rotation in the upper bicep, and as per usual, a single joint in the elbow will allow for a full 135-degree bend. And of course the wrist is going to be on a ball joint, which will do ball joint things. In the torso then, there are multiple polycap ball joints. I think there are like 3 or 4 to facilitate a not all that great forward ab crunch, all things considered, despite how segmented everything is. And you get a minor backwards ab crunch. You get some all right side to side, but you can see even that was starting to pull the torso up out of the waist, which is unfortunate. And in the back then, the stabilizers are on ball joints, which will do ball joint things. You can rotate them as you want and swing them out as necessary. In the waist then, as per usual, your front skirts do come together on the runner, but you can clip them apart for individual articulation. But unlike the other front skirt armor, this is actually very hard to actually articulate, but you can get it up maybe 45 degrees, but it's also very minimal, so there's not really that big a reason to articulate it. Your side skirt armor is going to be fused to the leg, and you can rotate it as is necessary, and there's some really nice thruster details on the underside of that. And your back skirt is going to be fixed in place as usual. There is a hip swing mechanism, oh, there it goes again, that allows both legs to swing down forward to enhance the range of articulation. So for forward kicks, you can get just about 90 degrees. For side kicks, you can get almost 90 degrees, but you do need to swing this extra armor on the thigh out of the way quite a bit to enable that. And by using the hip drop for back kicks, you can get almost 45 degrees, which is better than the other Leos, but still not great. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier, of course, the torso can 360 about the ball joint, but just be careful you don't pop it out. You will get some rotation in the upper thigh, 45 degrees out and in, and a double bend in the knee as per usual will allow for a nearly 180 degree bend, but of course there are going to be those hollow details in the sides of the knee joint that get exposed when you do so that don't look all that great. The ankle armor does not articulate at all for overall toe dips. You get very little. And for toe raises, again, next to nothing. You get a very minor side to side tilt, and you really can't rotate the foot all that much. So yeah, overall articulation of the Leo R ranges from mediocre to very disappointing. I'm wary of how natural this is going to look in melee poses given the poor torso articulation, lack of shoulder swing, and the very poor foot articulation, meaning that wide-legged grounded poses likely are not going to be on the table, or at the very least will not look natural while doing them. But let's see the articulation and some poses. So getting the high-grade Leo R into a bit of a spin, this is normally where I would start with a running pose, and originally I wanted to have it running with the open expressive hand kind of bent out in front of it, with the beam lance spread out horizontally behind it as it's running in and charging at an opponent, but unfortunately, as you might imagine from the very small surface area of the high heel feet, this kit is not balancing on one foot, especially not with that very poor ankle articulation. So here it is in a wide-legged pose doing a similar motion to what I wanted to have it doing running, but as you can see, this doesn't look the greatest with the high heel feet, especially because of that very poor ankle articulation, meaning that you can't have both feet flat on the ground at the same time, so it does look like it is rolling one or both ankles at all times on the ground. This is definitely a kit you either want in a neutral pose on the ground or having in the air doing its dynamic posing to emphasize the agility of the mobile suit, because again, that is what this kit's design language is emphasizing. Its high mobility, very nimble nature, allowing for very deft strikes with its beam lance. That is definitely what you want to have it doing, and having it on the ground in this kind of pose here, or in another pose that I have later mimicking the pose I had with the blast impulse with the beam javelin, where it is very wide-legged, wielding it two-handed, kind of swinging it horizontally. It really doesn't work because of that extremely poor ankle articulation, meaning that, again, you cannot have the feet planted on the ground, and it looks very unnatural in most grounded poses. So yeah, really wouldn't want to have this kit doing something like this unless you have it in a bit more of a neutral pose with the feet basically straight down so that they can be planted on the ground properly. And of course, to cover all my bases, here is the kit crouching, doing a pose like it's part of a hedge of spears or whatever, that old anti-cavalry formation with a bunch of spearmen where you have like a bunch of them crouching down with like the spears pointed up and a bunch of them standing with the spears pointed forward to make like a big bristling wall that horses do not want to run into of spears. But anyway, here it is crouching with the spear two-handed pointed up, and this is fine. I mean, it does the job okay of kneeling while looking somewhat natural. It's a little bit odd, again, with the back foot because of the high heel feet, where it just doesn't look quite right, but holding the spear up like this, it looks okay two-handed. I think it looks a lot better one-handed, where again, you're emphasizing the deftness of its strikes and the grace with which it is fighting, less so than this pose where wielding the lance two-handed really shows off the weapon's weight and heft, which really is not conducive to what this kit wants to do. Again, you want this kit to show off how nimble and agile it is, not how heavy and powerful the weapon is. So yeah, while it can crouch, while it can pull this pose off, not really something I would recommend doing on your shelf. So getting the kit into the air, here it is charging forward, performing a thrusting stab with the beam lance, and yeah, this really is where this kit is going to shine, where it is in these aerial, very mobile poses. And unlike something like the Leo S, it can actually be mid-strike instead of pre-strike and still look okay. I originally wanted this to be post-strike with the arm at full extension, but at that point the back end of the beam lance was colliding with the stabilizers slash boosters on the back, and that just really wasn't going to happen. So here it is with the elbow bent in a mid-strike instead, and I really don't fault this kit entirely for that, because again, with the design of the beam lance, with how long it is, it was bound to collide with something in certain poses. So yeah, not the biggest deal in the world, but this is still a pretty dynamic pose that does look quite good on the shelf. So this pose and poses like it are going to be where the Leo R is going to shine, and what you really want to have it doing. Having it in the air, emphasizing the motion, emphasizing the lightness of its strikes, to again show that it is a very quick, high mobility mobile suit, and despite the size of the beam lance, it is still a very nimble, agile weapon that it can wield with speed and elegance. So yeah, this is definitely something I would consider having this kit do on the shelf. So I couldn't resist seeing this kit with the long flowing blonde hair and the very long, thin spear-like weapon. I had to get it in the very iconic cane high wind pose, so I'll leave this spinning around for a bit while I get into the conclusion. So in conclusion, the high-grade Leo R is very much like the other two Stardust Knights, still a Leo at the end of the day. It has a simple, streamlined build that you can bang out fairly quickly, but unlike those other two kits, this kit has several pretty bad color inaccuracies, including the color-correcting stickers, with the wraparound sticker going around the elbow being particularly bad in terms of being annoying to apply and not looking great even if you do. So that's definitely a part I would recommend painting in. And in addition to a pretty big color inaccuracy that the other two kits lacked, because once you put on the color correcting stickers, and even including the color correcting stickers, those two kits, the Leo N and S, were both pretty color accurate across the board. This kit is incredibly bare bones in terms of its accessories, but that is to be expected given the very limited loadout this kit has in universe, only having one handheld weapon and most of its accessories being hand options. And in terms of posability, this kit does suffer greatly in that regard, with ground poses being incredibly limited due to the very poor, very small surface area of the feet and poor articulation in several key areas. So the build for this kit is, of course, very streamlined, being based on the Leo. Most parts are just two halves of sandwiched together. There are plenty of hollow spaces all across this kit, incredibly minimal inner frame, and many of the joints this kit does have in the torso and in the connection from the hip into the leg are going to be reliant on polycap ball joints. So while the connection into the leg has been reworked, at least the socket the polycap ball joint goes into to allow for a tighter connection, to the point where I don't consider that much of an issue anymore, the polycaps in the torso are still quite problematic, and they do tend to cause the torso to pop out, either a segment of it or entirely from the hip, as you articulate it, just because of how loose those polycaps are in the socket and how they tend to pop out as you articulate. So that isn't great, but the rest of the build is competent enough that it shouldn't pose much of an issue or feel too problematic as you build the kit. In terms of aesthetics then, this is, again, like the other two Stardust Knights, really where this kit is going to be hit or miss for you, and the main reason why you would want to get this kit, because it is incredibly unique. This kit is going for a very overt feminine aesthetic, with the hourglass figure, the high heel feet, and the long flowing blonde hair, as well as the various rounded edges all across this kit, including things like the shoulder armor to give it both a more soft look as well as emphasize the aerodynamic nature of this kit to complement its very nimble, high mobility fighting style. This is very similar to what something like the Nobel Gundam did from G Gundam, where it's designed with very clear, overt human feminine traits, including long flowing hair. Now this may not be for everyone, it's not really for me, I think the hair is a little bit much, but the rest of this kit certainly can work and definitely gives a lot of a very fantasy, like female warrior vibe. But this kit does suffer in terms of color accuracy. Like I mentioned earlier, with the big wraparound sticker going around the elbows, that part is best painted in, because that wraparound sticker would be a gigantic pain to put on and not look all that great. And there is a very major color inaccuracy on the underside of the shoulder armor needing to be painted in the same shade of gray as the frame, where there is a giant surface in that light pale blue if you don't do so. So that's definitely something you should probably paint in. In terms of accessories then, yeah, this comes to basically everything you would expect it to, with only one handled weapon, the beam lance, as well as some hand options to give you more natural posing. The specialized holding hand for the beam lance, where the wrist is at an angle to make thrusting attacks a lot more natural looking, is very appreciated, and the open expressive hand, the other pose, to emphasize the grace with which it is flying around and doing attacks, also helps a lot in terms of making poses look natural. So those are very appreciated, and this kit comes with essentially everything you would want or expect it to. In terms of articulation then, this is where this kit really does suffer quite a bit. The extremely poor ankle articulation does lead to grounded poses looking very unnatural, with one or both of the feet kind of rolling on the ground and not being planted flat, as you should be seeing now with the two-handed horizontal swing with the beam lance. In addition, the poor shoulder swing articulation does mean your range of motion for your strikes with the beam lance is quite limited, and poor torso articulation from the polycap ball joints does mean that you can fail to convey a bit of weight or intention behind the strikes quite a bit, because the torso will want to pop out as you articulate it, and poor articulation in the head because of the hair colliding with the stabilizers slash boosters in the back, and just running into things makes it hard to have the kit looking in the same direction it's striking unless it is striking directly in front of itself, which can lead to many poses feeling unnatural or much more difficult to get into than its contemporaries, which does make this kit a lot more annoying to work with than I was expecting, and than it really should be. So would I recommend this kit? Again, very similar to the other two Stardust Knights, a lot of it's going to depend on how much you like this aesthetic. If you really don't like this aesthetic, I can safely say you can skip out on this kit and not miss much. If you like this aesthetic, or if you're planning on getting the full trio of the Stardust Knights, I do think they make a very nice full complete set, and this kit is, of course, an invaluable part of that set. And if you want the full like trio all assembled, then yeah, by all means go get this kit. In terms of just looking good on your shelf in a neutral pose, or in one of the few aerial poses where it does look really natural, then yeah, this kit does look quite good in those few poses, but you sacrifice a lot of versatility in this kit, just like the other Stardust Knights. So if you like having your kits with a ton of range of motion so you can express yourself creatively in how you like to pose them, or if you want your kits doing anything extremely dynamic on the ground, this is a kit I would say you can safely skip out on. So that was my review of the high-grade Leo R. What do you think of this kit? Let me know in the comments below. If you like reviews like these, make sure to sub the notification bell so you know miss future uploads. If you like this video, give it a like, and I will see you next time with my review of the high-grade Ash Savior / Ash Inventor / Ash Saber. It's a Super Robot Wars kit, so they have been very inconsistent with localizing the name over the years, but I'll see you then.